Taiwan's Coast Guard says it is upping its patrols and that it's determined to protect Taiwan's sovereignty as the Chinese fishing season reopens and tens of thousands of boats leave Chinese ports.
The opposition Taiwan People's Party says it can explain the expense irregularities that have sparked corruption allegations. The U.S. Democratic National Convention is about to begin in Chicago, but questions about the country's support for Israel are at the forefront of some voters' minds. Plus, Keelung's unique Ghost Festival celebrates its 170th year. But what's behind this fiery tradition? A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Leslie Liao. Taiwan's Coast Guard is stepping up its monitoring of Chinese ships operating around the Taiwan Strait. Rick Liao reports.
A Chinese fishing vessel spotted trespassing by the Taiwanese Coast Guard. China's fishing season has just reopened and tens of thousands of boats like this are heading out of Chinese harbours and coming near Taiwan's islands just across the strait. Beijing claims all of it, the waters and Taiwan, as part of its territory and has been upping threats to take the island nation by force. Along with the massive fishing fleet, China sent 3 government boats across the median line, an unofficial but sensitive demarcation of boundaries.
此次行动旨在增强对台湾海峡的海上交通管控和应急救援能力，切实保障在台湾海峡航行、生产作业的船舶、设施和人员的生命财产安全。
Taiwan warns that such actions are part of grey zone warfare tactics used by China, also known as the PRC, to put pressure on the self-ruled island nation to accept its claims of sovereignty without resorting to full military conflict.
Now, the Taiwan side will have to respond by showing that they do have jurisdiction, but do so in a way that also shows that they are not escalating, because the PRC side, I think, will be quite ready to take any Taiwan action and to show that it is provocative and dangerous and escalatory.
So far, Taiwan has shown it is unafraid to go head-to-head with Chinese Coast Guard, now even sharing videos of the confrontations.
China Coast Guard, 14608. This is ROC Taiwan Patrol Vessel, PP 3520 calling. Adjust your course and leave our restricted waters immediately.
Taiwan's Coast Guard has increased its patrols and says it will be resolutely enforcing the law to protect Taiwan's rights at sea. It's a balancing act of standing one's ground without provoking an already belligerent neighbour. There's been animosity across the strait for decades, but in recent months the focus has been the waters, where incidents between the two sides have at times become deadly. With the fishing season reopened and more Chinese fishing ships coming near Taiwan, the chance of a misstep is increasing, and with that, the prospect of sparking a greater conflict. Alex Chen, Joseph Wu and Rick Lowett in New Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
China and the Philippines are accusing each other of ramming vessels in the South China Sea. China's Coast Guard released footage of the incident, saying a Philippine vessel deliberately collided with their boat. Meanwhile, Manila says Beijing conducted aggressive maneuvers damaging 2 of its vessels while they were on a resupply mission near Sabina Shoal. It's the latest clash in the disputed waters, despite the 2 countries in July agreeing to ease tensions at sea. The Taiwan People's Party is fending off questions about its expenses during its leader Wen-je's presidential campaign. The party says it incorrectly reported hundreds of thousands of US dollars in expenses, but all the mistakes can be explained. Chris Gordon reports.
Officials from the Taiwan People's Party, or TPP, are fighting back against a corruption scandal that has engulfed the party and damaged its popularity. The scandal stems from the presidential campaign of the party's candidate and leader Wen-je. The campaign itself now admits that more than $500,000 US in expenses were improperly reported. Ke and others say they were not aware of the questionable expenses and are blaming them on an outside accountant who has been questioned by police and released on bail. Former head of the campaign, Vivian Huang, restated that the campaign can prove its innocence and that all expenses can be fully accounted for. She also apologized for the mistakes made by the campaign and its accountants.
第一章就是大家最熟悉的，也就是之前大家一直争议说96万多的便当，那事实上它是有2笔支出，一笔是960元，一笔是110元。
Now, a lingering question is whether or not the public is going to accept the story that the party is offering. And the allegations have already had a major impact on the popularity of the party and on Ke himself, a man once seen to be one of the top contenders for the presidency. Now, many analysts have also said that if Ke is seen by the public to be culpable for these crimes, it's very unlikely that the party will survive without him. So whatever the outcome of this investigation, it seems clear that the party is going to have not just a legal crisis on its hands, but a political one as well. Luffy Lee and Chris Gorin for TaiwanPlus.
Thousands of people are gathering in Chicago this week for the U.S. Democratic Party's National Convention. It's a tradition dating back to the 1800s, and delegates are expected to rally around party nominee Kamala Harris. But they'll also be met by protesters demanding more to be done to end Israel's war in Gaza. Protesters on the streets of Chicago. They're demanding U.S. Democratic nominee Kamala Harris to clarify her stance on Israel and its war on Gaza. It comes ahead of the Democratic Party's National Convention, a 4-day affair beginning on Monday. Harris has already secured her party's nomination to run in the November presidential election, so the convention is likely to spotlight the party's platform. But tens of thousands of people are expected to gather outside the event, calling for the party to limit its support for Israel.
We're expecting tens of thousands. We don't know exactly how many.
It comes as the Biden administration faces criticism for its military support of Israel's assault on Gaza, a war that health authorities there say has killed 40,000 people since October. That was after Palestinian militant group Hamas launched an attack on Israel, killing over 1,000 people and taking hundreds hostage. Protesters here are now hoping the party's new platform will reel in U.S. assistance to Israel.
I think that the Democrats should have to earn our votes. I think that we shouldn't just give them away automatically because they're not Trump. I think their policies are really similar. I'm here hoping that they'll sign an arms embargo to Israel.
The Democratic Party needs to change its policy regarding Israel and respect international law and respect human rights.
While Harris is yet to present a clear stance on Gaza, she has called for a ceasefire. The vice president has also condemned the war's civilian casualties.
We got to get a ceasefire, and we got to get those hostages out.
The internal optimism surrounding the DNC may be just that, internal, as strict security measures come down on Chicago in anticipation of conflict between delegates and protesters. Devin Tsai and Leslie Liao for TaiwanPlus. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken is in Tel Aviv to help push for a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas.
This is a decisive moment, probably the best, maybe the last opportunity to get the hostages home.
Israel's government says it's cautiously optimistic, but the Palestinian militant group Hamas is accusing Israel of trying to blow up a potential deal. Hamas wants to end the war in Gaza, while Israel wants a temporary pause in fighting. The war erupted in October after Hamas attacked Israel, killing around 1,200 people. Hundreds of others were taken hostage. Health authorities in Gaza say more than 40,000 people have been killed by Israel's assault on the Strip. The U.S. and South Korea have launched their annual joint military exercises.
국가 비상사태를 대비하여 정부 차원의 비상 대비 계획을 점검하고 전시 전환과 국가 총력전 수행 능력을 강화하는 훈련입니다.
This year's Ulchi Freedom Shield exercises will test the two militaries' readiness to fend off North Korean cyber and missile attacks. 19,000 troops will take part in 11 days of operations. The South will also hold its civil defense drills designed to prepare for a nuclear attack during that time. The drills come amid a period of high tensions on the Korean peninsula. North Korea has condemned the exercises as a rehearsal for war. Thousands of people in northern Taiwan celebrated a fiery Ghost Month tradition. It's one of Keelung's most awe-inspiring rituals, but its origins are steeped in a bloody war. Tiffany Wong tells us more.
A whole city coming together to mark 170 years since the end of a deadly conflict. People in Keelung in northern Taiwan are remembering those who died in a battle between groups of settlers to the coastal city. Although peace has long been restored to the area, the 15 local clans involved in the conflict still look back on their history each year in a special ceremony during the Ghost Month.
因为还是依照姓氏的方式组成，那所以同一个姓氏人就还是会觉得说，哦，我15年，因为总共有15个单位会轮流举办，那我应该要好好参与这个活动，它会非常的有意义。
Many Keelung natives say they grew up attending the event, but the vibrant celebrations have attracted attention from far outside the city's borders.
Thousands of people from all over Taiwan have gathered to celebrate the northern port city's most well-known tradition, and the festivities have kicked off with floats from each clan, as well as performances from local dance groups and musical acts.
But the day's main event is still yet to come. The parade ends at the Badozi Harbor, where the clans first place offerings at each altar.
This year, the Liao clan is in charge of the festivities, and they've made a huge altar depicting their ancestral home. But the beautiful lantern won't be here for long. It'll go up in flames and be sent off into the harbor, another special way the city celebrates this tradition.
Ghost Month is celebrated around the country to honor the dead, but Keelung's traditions are unique to the area.
因为这换水灯这个比较有它的意义存在，它主要是邀请海上的亡魂接受阳间的这个供奉就是拜拜啦，让他们太极公啊、假货了啦。
According to tradition, lanterns that sail farther reach more souls. And with each passing year, the clans hope that the bad blood between them remains a distant memory as they continue this tradition for decades to come. Kama Shri and Tiffany Wong in Keelung for TaiwanPlus.
Hengchun on Taiwan's southern tip has celebrated the Ghost Festival with a traditional climbing race that dates back over a century. Teams clamber up an obstacle course greased with cow fat, trying to be the first to capture flags at the top. The winning team gets a prize that this year came to more than $32,000 US. Last year's race was canceled due to a typhoon, but this year's event went smoothly despite heavy rain. Coming up after the break, even the spirits can't avoid inflation. Stay tuned to find out how people are keeping prices down during Ghost Month festivities.
Start your weekend with a cup of coffee and a moment to reflect on what happened this week.
Hello and welcome.
We've got you covered, from defense and politics to high tech and the arts.
Not just to Taiwan, the whole world is watching.
You make the coffee, we make the news. Here's what happened on TaiwanPlus.
I'm Joyce Sun in Bangkok, Thailand, and you're watching TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
In the face of adversity, the power of truth.
A roadmap for a just and open world. Charted by the freest country in Asia.
5, 4, 3, 2,
A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Ian Kavat. Taiwanese semiconductor giant TSMC.
Public buses to be electric by 2030. A mission that begins with listening.
And telling the stories of Taiwan.
In Taipei for TaiwanPlus.
Drawing insight from original thinkers.
And sharing it with the world. TaiwanPlus News, a voice of freedom in Asia.
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. India's medical system has ground to a halt as hundreds of thousands of doctors walk off the job protesting the rape and murder of a trainee medic. They want justice for the victim and a guarantee of safety for doctors and paramedics. Rosie Wen-je reports.
We want justice! We want justice! We want justice!
Protests are growing across India as thousands demand swift justice for a junior doctor who was raped and murdered nearly 2 weeks ago. They're calling for stronger security and more stringent laws to protect medical staff. Medics have been on strike since the incident, saying the doctor's death highlights the vulnerability in hospitals across the country, where staff work with a lack of protection.
But किसको पता है कि आज हॉस्पिटल भी सेफ नहीं है, हॉस्पिटल में भी आपके साथ कुछ भी हो सकता है रात बिरात को, तो उस चीज के लिए हमें एक सिक्योरिटी चाहिए, तो उसके लिए हम यहाँ पे एकत्रित हो.
Around 1 million doctors have now walked off the job, paralysing the medical system in a country with a population of 1.4 billion. The government has urged doctors to return to their duties in the public interest, but they say they will continue to protest until there is justice for the victim. The body of the 31-year-old trainee medic was discovered covered in blood and mutilated at a government-run hospital in Kolkata, an autopsy revealing she'd been raped before her murder. Indian authorities arrested and charged a volunteer police officer with the crime, but the family of the victim say they believe other people are involved. The case has now been transferred to federal investigators after state government officials were accused of destroying evidence and mishandling the investigation.
फिर मेरे जो दीदी है उन्होंने फ़ोन किया तो बोलते हैं क्या हुआ है मेरी बेटी का बोलिए तो बोले हैं कि हम क्या डॉक्टर हैं हम बोलेंगे हम ले जा रहे हैं डॉक्टर के पास वही बोलेंगे फिर फ़ोन काट कर दिया फिर उसके बाद फिर मेरे दीदी ने फ़ोन किया तब उन लोगों ने बोल रहा कि आप आ रहे हैं ना आप लोग तो बोलते हैं हाँ आ रहे हैं आपके बेटी ने सुसाइड किया है.
But bringing justice to this family isn't expected to ease public anger, with the protest movement highlighting how women in India continue to suffer from violence. That's despite tougher laws being introduced in 2012, following the gang rape and murder of a 23-year-old girl on a moving bus in Delhi. In 2012, 25,000 rape cases were recorded, but since then the annual number of cases has increased to over 30,000, while conviction rates are lower than 30%. Campaigners say not enough has been done to deter violence against women, and more systematic change is needed to stamp out the problem.
Increasing the sentence, making it much more severe would not make much of the difference. Unless either we are doing the societal improvement in terms of we are actually making the changes, mindset is changing. We are providing that kind of security which should be there.
And that lack of judicial and societal change is prompting this national reckoning, with protesters vowing to stay on the streets until there is meaningful change, saying enough is enough. Dolphine Chen and Rosie Greninger for TaiwanPlus.
Vietnamese leader To Lam is on a 3-day visit to China where he'll meet with President Xi Jinping and Premier Li Qiang. Lam arrived in Guangzhou City in southern China on Sunday. It's his first visit to China since becoming president in May and General Secretary of the Communist Party earlier this month. He says Vietnam values the two countries' friendship and prioritizes the development of relations with China. While the countries share close ties, they have also had disputes over claims to the South China Sea. An infestation of coral-eating starfish is threatening the reefs on Taiwan's outlying Pratas Island. Tens of thousands of crown-of-thorns starfish have destroyed 90% of coral in some areas. The government has recruited volunteers to manually remove them throughout the year. Scientists say warming ocean temperatures may have caused the starfish's spread.
可能是因为这种大量的水质不好就进来啊，现在加上一个什么热，它天气热的话，它吃得更快，产得更多。
Rising living costs have been putting the squeeze on people around the country in recent months. And now the Midsummer Ghost Festival is the latest victim of inflation. In some areas, event organizers have had to drastically cut back on the offerings left out for wandering spirits. John Van Trieste has this report.
Tables and tables of lavish offerings, a feast for spirits from the underworld. Tradition holds that the spirits come back late each summer. To keep on their good side, people put on ceremonial banquets for them. But this year, the rising cost of living means some are having to cut corners. The rural central Taiwan town of Huwei was once known for its so-called mountain of meat, but this time around, the pigs are rentals. This vendor, who didn't want to be filmed, says a whole pig now goes for over $370 US, but he says he's lent them for the ceremony for just $130 US apiece. The organizing committee says it's just not economical to provide such rich fare as in past years. They've even turned to other meats to keep under budget. Agriculture officials say pork is a more time and resource-intensive meat, and that strong seasonal demand is also affecting supply.
猪肉一养就要养半年嘛，那鸡肉只要养1-2个月就可以，它们周转率很高。最近猪源比较少，是因为我们猪舍都在改建，因为现在东元节是我们畜禽产品的1年1度的最大的需求节日之一。
But it isn't just pork. Forecasters at think tank CIER expect the consumer price index to rise 2.16% this year. Slightly lower than last year, but high enough to see people thinking about cutting costs however they can. Even the afterlife may not be able to escape the pinch. Leon Lien and John Van Trieste for TaiwanPlus.
Mongolia is undergoing a major demographic shift. Young people are leaving their families and flocks on the steppe and looking to make a life for themselves in the city. Jonathan Kaplan looks at the rift that is growing in Mongolian society.
Bat Arden Hulan has come a long way since her youth on the Mongolian steppe. In many ways, she's a success story for the country, having emerged from poverty to study in Europe and now pursuing a career in finance.
Миний хувьд нормал гэж бодож исэн юм амьдралаа хэв маяг амьдралаар явж байгаад би Люксембургт очиод ингээд одоо малчин айлаас гаралтай манайх ингээд хөдөө байдаг гэртээ амьдардаг жилдээ 4-5 удаа нүүдэг гэрээсээ хол байдаг гэд ингээд ярахаар хүмүүсийн ингээд нүдэн орой дээрээ гараад гэдэг юм уу айгүй тийм өрөвдөж хөөрхийлэх байдлаар айгүй хандаад исэн.
Like many people in her country, she's moved to Mongolia's capital seeking a better life. Ulaanbaatar, Mongolia's capital and only major city, is now home to nearly half of the nation's 3.4 million people. It's doubled in population in the past 2 decades and grows every year with more newcomers. As the country's economy grows and its government opens up, people are giving up lives of manual labor in the countryside to pursue education and career opportunities in the city.
өөрийнхөө хүсчихсэн одоо боловсрол эзэм шиг бодоод нөө амьдрал дээр гарчаал нэг амарцсан ч юм ааш нэг зах зээл нөхцөл эхэлсэн шүү дээ. Тэгэл өөрөө явж чаддаг болохоор хүүхдүүдээ л өөрийнхөө хийгээгүй хийлгэж бодсон.
The city also offers respite from an ever harsher environment on the steppe. Mongolia's winters have become colder and longer over the past 2 decades, with desertification and shorter summers threatening agriculture and livestock herding. But overturning thousands of years of traditional living has consequences, especially for those who stay on the steppe.
байна. Одоо ингээд би ч өөрөө найзуудтайраа тийш явах бодлоо хийж байна. Манай найз ч бодо бүгд хотод байгаа. Ихэнх зарим гадаад руугаа хайцсан. тэгэл найзуудтайгаа яагаад найзууд нь би одоо бараг ангиас энэ ч өөр хөдөө ганцаараа найзууд дээр.
And seeing more people leave this close-knit society has led to loneliness.
Тэгэл ер нь хэцүүштэй танилын үрээ багасаал тэгэл хүн ам цөөрөөл тэгэл дандаа ерөөсө танихаасаа танихгүй усууд хөгжүүлнэх болчихно.
But for those who've come from the steppe, adapting to life in Ulaanbaatar hasn't been easy either. The city's pollution, noise, and traffic are all sources of anxiety. It's a challenge that's led some young people to find contentment in their rural lives.
Ладаас очих юмсан одоо хотод тэдэн байж болох би яагаад байж болохгүй гэж тэгж боддог байсан. Тэгээ явандаа хөдөө ирэн зүгээр юм байна уу? Яг тэгээд хүмүүс хаач хэлсэн хүний л адилхан амьдрах нөхцөл адилхан хотод очсон ч адилхан мөнгө юу.
Mongolia's future lies somewhere in the tension between its enduring steppe culture and new ways of life emerging in its urban core. And the country's young people will have to decide which life is right for them. James Lin, Bryn Thomas, and Jonathan Kaplan for TaiwanPlus.
Thank you for watching TaiwanPlus News. You can visit the TaiwanPlus website or follow our social media for more stories from Taiwan and around the world. Finally, we leave you with more Ghost Festival celebrations across Taiwan. I'm Liao. Take care and see you next time.